I've been living in my apartment with my girlfriend for around 7 months now, and I've really grown fond of the place. It's the one place where I truly feel like I'm home for the first time. Given the fact that it's spacious enough and in a good location, I practically don't need to walk more than 2 minutes to reach anything I need on my street. The store, the bakery, the gym, the clinic, you name it. But that's only the icing on the cake. What makes me truly feel at home is the fact that I'm with my girlfriend and no longer have that feeling of being in a temporary place, so to say. I guess that's what they mean when they say, home is where the heart is. Anyway, I work as a freelancer, which means I spend the majority of the day inside the apartment. I have a tiny room which I use as an office, and to the left of my desk is a window that overlooks the parking lot of the apartment complex and the adjacent buildings. Now, I don't really look out the window, since there's nothing particularly interesting to see. I live on the second floor, and from where I sit, I can only see a 2-story building across the view. However, if I crane my head enough and move my chair in the right position, I can see the window of the building across, and during night, I can see clearly inside of the room. Usually, I would see some colorful cutouts of paper letters hanging around, and a bunch of kids with one woman who was supposedly their mentor, but I never once gave it a second thought or a longer glance. It would be kind of weird. I pass by that building every day when I go to the gym, and I can see illustrations of children on the wall with the name Our Games, Daycare Center and Playroom. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out what the building is used for. I would see the teacher occasionally outside as well, but since the lights in my room are always off, she probably never saw me, so I never bothered to say hi to her. Like I said, I never paid too much attention to it. That was until about a week ago, that is. It all started one night when I had a particularly busy day. It was around 8 p.m. in the evening, and I was catching up on some work. I leaned against my chair to stretch my back and peered out the window. Amid the darkness of the complex, I saw the window glowing in bright white light. In the few seconds of glancing at it, I saw some kids running around in a gyrating motion, with one adult woman, the teacher. The kids' faces were covered in red paint, so I just assumed they were playing some games and possibly dancing, singing, whatever. I found the whole thing uninteresting, so I just returned to my work for the rest of the night. The next night when I was working, I looked out of the window again and saw the daycare center being active. Only this time, I could see only one kid standing in the room, facing away from the window. He was motionless, with his arms above his head, as if he were holding something above. But I saw nothing in his hands. After about half a minute of staring, the kid put his hands down and hunched forward, rubbing his shoulders, clearly motioning that his muscles hurt. Almost immediately, the teacher came into view and bent down, so that her face was closer to the kid's. She gestured something which looked like she was scolding him, but I just wrote it off as her reminding him of the rules, or giving him a command or something. After a brief exchange, the kid raised his arms back up again, and the teacher disappeared out of view. I figured they were playing some kind of game in which the kid had to be still until a command was given, since I remember playing something similar as a kid. I was perplexed by the whole thing though, since it seemed a little harsh on the kids. However, the notification on my laptop snapped me back to reality, and I returned to work, completely displacing the daycare out of my mind. The next day is when things started to get weird. Again, I leaned back in my chair and I saw the lights in the daycare center. This time, however, I saw a bunch of kids gathered around a table with the teacher at the forefront. I could see her smiling, but the expressions of the kids' faces couldn't be more opposite. The few that I saw looked scared to death, as their gazes were transfixed on the teacher. Still smiling, she uttered something and raised her index finger. Next, she started pointing at the children one by one, very slowly, going in circles. The kids looked terrified at this point, and I'm pretty sure I saw one of the kids cry. It didn't take me long to realize that the teacher was playing Eeny Meeny Miny Moe. The moment seemed to last forever, and I felt as if I was among those kids over there, holding my breath the entire time. She slowed down the final few counts, retaining her finger on each child for a few seconds before moving to the next one. Each time she would do that, I thought that was it. This was the child she chose. But then she would count another time, and another, and another. And then she did stop. She held her index in front of one of the boys, with a wide grin on her face. She then lowered her hand and said something, after which almost immediately all the other kids dispersed out of view, leaving only the teacher and the chosen kid. She stood over him menacingly, the boy looking up at her and shivering. The teacher bent down on the side to pick something up, and a moment later she placed something black on the desk. I can see from here that it was a very tiny kitten, moving against the teacher's hand trustingly as she pet it. The kitten walked over to the kid, who started petting it gently, but the expression of fear didn't dissipate from his face. And then the teacher bent down again to reach for something else, and when she got back up, she placed a shiny object on the desk. I'm sure you can guess what it was, for I did as soon as I saw the glint. A kitchen knife. At this point, my heart was pounding and the kid started crying, as the knife was slid across the table towards him. As he cradled the kid in his arms close to his chest, he shook his head, not looking away from the animal that trusted him completely. But the teacher started yelling at him, taking an even more threatening pose. The kid was sobbing now, but he slowly took up the knife with trembling hands and placed the endearing kitten on the desk. He then raised the knife above his head and held it there, while continuing to sob. The teacher shouted something at him again, and despite knowing what would happen next, it still surprised me and shocked me to my core. He brought it down upon the kitten. Even as the poor thing stopped showing any signs of movement, the kid continued, all the while holding his eyes tightly closed. When he was finally done, he dropped the knife and looked at the mess on the table. He was covered in blood as the teacher stood there with her arms on her hips, no longer menacing, but rather smiling and triumphant. She gestured to the other kids to gather around, and as they did, she smeared the blood over each of their faces, after which they started to dance around like they did a few nights prior to that. I felt sick. It took my brain a while to process what I was seeing. The kids, although seemingly happy dancing from behind, had palpable fear on their faces. The next thing I knew, light came on in the room and my girlfriend walked in with a stern, "What are you doing?" type of question. I quickly shushed her and told her to turn the lights off, but it was too late. The teacher had already seen the lights come on, and she was staring right at me, motionless, with a face that had no expression or emotion whatsoever. I quickly ducked below the window as the lights went out again, and my confused girlfriend stood by the door, asking me what was going on in a hushed tone. I motioned for her to approach, but to stay out of line of sight. I tried to explain to her what was going on, but she wasn't buying any of it. I'd been pranking her too much in the past, so now she didn't believe me. I told her to look, but she only remarked that it was just a normal daycare. To my amazement, when I looked over there, it indeed seemed like they were just doing normal things. There was no blood anywhere, no animals, just the kids and the teacher doing something by the desks. My girlfriend dismissed my claims and went to bed, smirking along the way, still convinced that this was just another prank that I was trying to pull on her. As she left, I turned on my cell phone and put it by the window, and pointed it to the daycare center to record, while I remained below, out of sight. After a while, nothing surreal happened and the parents arrived to pick up the children. They appeared to be conversing with the teacher and the children themselves behaved normally. I should have called the police then and there, but truth be told, I questioned my own sanity, and if I had just imagined the whole thing. Is it possible that it was all just some kind of game that the kids were playing, and that killing that kitten was just a well-prepared and realistic act? As the parents left with their kids, the teacher turned off the lights and that was that. I waited a few minutes before actually stopping the recording. I peered out of the window, convinced I was in the clear. I finished up work that night, trying to forget the whole thing and double-checked if every window and door in my apartment had been locked that night. I then sat down in the living room and replayed the video that I had recorded. I prayed to God that the children were indeed not subject to any more ruthless acts of violence that I had potentially missed while recording. Sure enough, the children seemed to only be engaged in normal playroom activities. And then the parents came, talked to the teacher, picked up their kids and left, after which the room went dark. I continued staring at the video of the dark window, relieved that I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. But as I kept staring, the more I got this nagging feeling that I was missing something. I replayed the video again from the part where the lights go out and still nothing. And then I played it one more time and paused it midway. It made shivers run down my spine. There in the window frame stood a dark figure, unmistakably the teacher. She just stood there doing nothing, facing directly towards the camera, arms slumped next to her body, head tilted slightly. I replayed it over and over, trying to convince myself it was just the dark, and my bad camera making it seem like someone was there. But the more I reviewed it, the more it became clear that she was indeed there, motionless during those few minutes until the video ended. I ran back to my working room and looked out the window again. The lights were on again, and I could see clearly into the daycare center. There were colorful paper cutouts in the window, arranged to form a message. The message simply read, "Watch." I didn't wait a second longer. I dialed the police and told them everything that was going on. In a matter of minutes, they arrived and searched the place, questioning me in the process. Apparently, the woman that had been running the daycare center was long gone. Her apartment was empty, and she was nowhere to be found. The kids didn't say anything either, claiming that the teacher was always friendly and kind and that they really enjoyed the activities she made them do. But the officers swear that they could see the fear in the kids' eyes whenever they asked them about what happened. Despite finding the animal, none of them seemed to want to talk about the ordeal and deny any such activities that took place there. The police had placed a unit to patrol the street, out of fear that she might retaliate against me. It's been a week since then, and I don't know if the daycare center is still active or not. In fact, I keep the curtains closed on my window, too afraid to look outside. Afraid that if I look, I would see the children playing with the teacher. Or worse. And most of all, afraid that if I peer through my window, I will see that sinister face looking back at me